The great shipyards of the Galactic Alliance stretched like a shining forest of metal and light. Dozens of massive orbital stations floated above the gas giant Veyron, each one glowing with energy as alien engineers shaped ships with impossible precision. From afar, it looked like archribbons of plasma, streams of nanites, and vast frames being woven together as if starships were born. Not built to the Alliance, construction was elegant. A Cerilith shipwright could bend crystal with the touch of a thought. A Lumerian engineer shaped alloys as if they were clay, singing them into form with harmonic waves. The insectoid Thrix assembled entire fleets with living drones that worked without rest. And then, the humans arrived. They were new to the Alliance. Only 30 years since their world had been invited into the Great Council. Humanity was young, compared to these civilizations that had thrived for millennia. They were respected for their courage during the Orion conflicts, but when it came to technology, they were seen as primitive children. A delegation of humans entered Dock 9 that morning. They wore plain work suits, their shoulders marked with the symbol of Earth Fleet. At their head walked Captain Alina Reyes, her dark hair tied back, her eyes sharp with determination. Behind her came her crew commander Jonas Hale, a grizzled engineer with oil-stained hands, and Lieutenant Asha Malik, young but already skilled in mechanical design. The aliens watched with curiosity as the humans unloaded crates onto the dock. The Cerilith counselor Sherak tilted his crystalline head, his faceted body glittering in the light. "What is this?" His voice chimed like breaking glass. Jonas pried open the first crate. Inside lay rows of simple metal tools, wrenches, drills, welding, torches, hammers, coils of wire, and even duct tape. The Thrix immediately began to click their mandibles in laughter. One of them scuttled forward and lifted a hammer between its claws. Stone Age. It hissed in its own tongue before tossing the tool back with disdain. The Lemurians rippled with amusement, their bioluminescent fins glowing in waves of mocking color. One translated for the others, "Do they expect to build a starship with pounding metal rods?" Murmurs spread across the dock. Aliens leaned closer, their eyes and sensors examining the crude equipment. Compared to the living drones and matter-weaving nanoforges of the Alliance, these tools were pitiful, outdated, laughable. Jerek's crystalline facets shifted until his form resembled a jagged smile. "Humans, you must be confused. These are not starships you work on. This is not your Earth." Captain Reyes met his shining gaze without flinching. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "We know where we are, and these," she tapped the crate of tools, "are what we'll use." The laughter grew louder. Some aliens waved their limbs in mockery, others turned away entirely. To them, it was a comedy. Fragile humans, with crude sticks and fire, trying to stand among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Lieutenant Usha's cheeks burned with anger, but Jonas laid a steady hand on her shoulder. His voice was low, gruff, meant only for their team. "Let them laugh. Tools don't win battles. What we do with them does." But inside, even Reyes felt the sting. She could feel the weight of their ridicule pressing on her. Every sneer, every hiss, every ripple of alien laughter echoed the same thought. Humans do not belong here. For a moment, she questioned herself. Could their simple methods truly compete? Could bolts and welding torches stand against nanoforges that could rewrite matter? Then she looked at her crew. At Jonas, who had spent his life repairing ships with nothing but scrap. At Asha, whose designs turned failures into victories. At the others who stood with pride despite the laughter. Humanity had always been underestimated, and every time, they had proven the universe wrong. She straightened her shoulders and spoke again, her voice carrying across the bay. "Laugh all you want. We're not here to impress you. We're here to build something that will survive what's coming." The dock grew quieter, though a few aliens still chuckled. They did not take her seriously. But from the far end of the station, a warning klaxon suddenly rang. A messenger ship burst into the system, its hull scarred and smoking. Through the emergency channels came a desperate voice. The Krail horde. They are coming. Worlds are burning. We need ships, now. The laughter stopped. The air in the shipyard grew tense. Even the proud Seralith counselor tilted his head, the glow of his body dimming in concern. Reyes exchanged a look with her crew. Fear rippled through her, but beneath it was fire. She knew this was the moment humanity had been waiting for. Then, she whispered, almost to herself, let's get to work. The news of the Krail horde spread through the Alliance shipyard, like fire racing across dry grass. Everywhere, engineers stopped their work. Voices rose, limbs trembled, and ships that had seemed majestic now felt fragile against the shadow of the enemy. The horde was not like other foes. They were a swarm without mercy, a fleet without number. Their ships were alive vast hulks of flesh and metal fused together, growing stronger with each world they consumed. The Alliance had fought them before, but always at great cost. Now, reports told of 3 fleets already destroyed, their ships torn apart as if they were paper in a storm. Inside Dock 9, the laughter that had once filled the air was gone. The aliens whispered to one another in fear. Even the proud Seer stood in silence, their crystalline forms dim with worry. Captain Alina Reyes felt the tension in her chest. She had seen fear before on Earth, during the wars of her youth. But this was different. These were civilizations thousands of years, older than her people, and even they were shaken. That told her more than any message ever could. She turned to her crew. Jonas Hale wiped sweat from his brow, his hands already blackened with grease. Lieutenant Asha Malik gripped her datapad so tightly her knuckles were pale. They were afraid, too, but behind their fear was something else. Determination. Rhea spoke softly, but her words cut through the noise around them. This is why we're here. They may not believe in us. They may laugh at us. But when the horde arrives, it won't matter who has the prettiest ships. It will matter who survives. Jonas gave a small, tired smile. And survival's the one thing we humans are damn good at. Asha nodded quickly. So we start now. We don't wait for their permission. Around them, the aliens were already panicking. A Thrix foreman clicked his mandibles angrily at his workers, demanding they move faster. A group of Lumerian engineers began chanting in their harmonic tones, reshaping alloy plates in desperate haste. But none of them spared a glance for the humans. To them, humanity was irrelevant, too small, too weak, too late to matter. Reyes ignored the looks, the dismissive whispers. She pointed at the crates of tools her crew had brought. Get everything open. Set up our section of the dock. I don't care if they think it's a joke we'll build. Jonas cracked open another crate, pulling out heavy welding torches. He grinned at the hiss of the flame. Now that's a sound I trust more than any singing fish. Asha pulled up on her datapad. They weren't elegant blueprints like the Alliance favored. They were rough, practical, full of redundancies. Lines of missiles, rows of railguns, armor stacked layer upon layer. A ship not designed to shine, but to endure. She showed the display to Reyes. If we can get the frame up, we can start reinforcing it plate by plate. It won't be beautiful, but... Reyes cut her off with a firm nod. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to last. Hours passed. Sparks flew from the human section of the dock as welding torches roared to life. Metal rang with the sound of hammers and drills. Sweat dripped down their faces as they worked by hand, bolting steel into place. The aliens passing by stopped to stare. Some still chuckled under their breath, shaking their heads at the sight of humans sweating and straining with primitive tools. But a few, just a few, paused longer. They saw the raw determination in those tired eyes. They saw how every plate was secured twice over, every joint reinforced with stubborn care. One young Lumerian whispered to another, "They do not shape. They do not weave. They force the metal to obey." In the command tower above the docks, Counselor Jarak watched with unreadable eyes. His crystalline body shifted with faint light as he studied the humans at work. To him, their methods were chaos, loud, clumsy, wasteful. Yet he could not deny the rhythm in it. The relentless drive that never slowed even when their arms shook with exhaustion. When the shift bell rang across the shipyard, the alien workers laid down their tools, but the humans did not stop. Through the artificial night, they kept going. Welding sparks lit their corner of the dock like a storm of fireflies. Their laughter quiet, rough, and tired code across the silent dot. By the second day, the humans had already erected the first sections of a massive frame, jagged and crude compared to the sleek vessels nearby, but it stood tall and strong, a skeleton waiting to be given life. Jonas wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the growing structure with pride. "She won't be pretty, Captain, but she'll take a hit better than anything they've got out there." Reyes placed a hand on the cold steel, her voice soft. "We're not building her to be pretty. We're building her to save lives." And for the first time, some of the aliens stopped laughing. The humans did not stop. Day after day, Dock 9 shook with the sound of hammers, drills, and welding torches. Sparks fell like showers of fire, lighting up the dark corners of the shipyard. While the other species relied on silent nanoforms and graceful energy weaving, humanity filled the air with noise and smoke. It was chaos, but it was living chaos. Captain Alina Reyes walked the length of the frame each morning, her boots clanging against the temporary platforms. The skeleton of their ship was rising fast. Thick beams, bolted and reinforced, formed the backbone. Layers of armor were already being welded into place. It was crude compared to the smooth, elegant curves of alien ships, but it was solid. Reyes stopped often to watch her crew. Jonas Hale, his face streaked with soot, moved from worker to worker, shouting instructions over the noise. His hands never stopped working, tightening bolts, fixing welding joints, hammering plates into place. Lieutenant Asha Malik sat cross-legged on a metal beam datapad in her lap, updating schematics as they changed the design on the fly. Every time a problem appeared, she found a way around it. Every time the materials didn't match the plan, she adjusted without hesitation. They worked like survivors, not artists. They built as if the galaxy depended on it. The aliens kept watching. At first, it was still laughter. A Thrix overseer clattered his mandibles, amused by how the humans sweated and cursed over every plate of metal. A group of Lemurians passed by, humming in disbelief that anyone would waste time pounding steel with sticks of fire. But then, as the days passed, the laughter grew quieter. The human ship was rising faster than anyone had expected. By the 5th day, its frame was already larger than most Alliance destroyers. By the 7th, its thick armor shone with the blackened scorch of welding, covering its jagged skeleton like the scales of a beast. The other ships in the yard still looked elegant and beautiful, but next to the human vessel, they seemed delicate. Fragile. Counselor Jarak, of the Saruth, visited Dock 9 on the 8th day. His crystalline form sparkled as he approached, flanked by 2 aides. He stared up at the towering structure the humans were building. "This is..." He paused, searching for a word. His voice rang like glass, striking stone. "Inelegant." Jonas, standing nearby with a wrench in his hand, looked up at the counselor. He wiped grease from his forehead and smirked. "Ugly, you mean? That's all right. Ugly's harder to kill." The Surlith tilted his shining head. His facets shifted uneasily, though he said nothing more. Later that evening, as the humans continued working under the glow of welding arcs, Asha leaned against a support beam and whispered to Reyes, "They're starting to see it. They don't want to admit it, but they're noticing." Reyes nodded slowly, her eyes on the massive frame. "Good. Let them. They'll understand soon enough." The turning point came on the 10th day. One of the Thrix ships nearby suffered a reactor malfunction during a test. A section of its hull tore open in a blast of energy, spilling fire into the dock. The alien drones scrambled, but their sleek tools were not designed for chaos. They froze, unable to adapt without instructions. The fire spread fast. Before anyone could react, Jonas was already shouting, "Grab extinguishers! Move!" The humans dropped their tools and rushed toward the blaze. They weren't elegant, and they weren't careful, they were fast. Reyes led the charge, welding torch in hand, cutting away burning debris. Jonas slammed heavy plating over a ruptured conduit, sealing it with brute strength. Asha dragged a stunned Thrix worker out of the smoke, coughing but alive. Within minutes, the humans had the fire under control. The alien ship was damaged but saved. Silence followed. The Thrix, usually so proud, stood in stunned stillness. One finally clacked its mandibles and spoke in a rasping voice. You fixed it. Without drones, without forges. How?" Jonas shrugged, tossing his extinguisher aside. Tools, sweat, and stubbornness. That night, for the first time, no one laughed at the sound of hammers in Dock 9. By the 12th day, the human vessel, now nicknamed the Ironclad by the crew, was nearly complete. Its jagged armor gleamed under the lights. Railgun turrets were mounted along its sides, massive barrels that looked primitive compared to the sleek energy weapons of the Alliance. Missile pods lined its belly, ugly and heavy. To the aliens, it looked more like a fortress than a ship, a monster forged from steel and fire. But to the humans, it was hope. Rhea stood on the highest platform, looking out across the bay. Around her, sparks still flew, workers still shouted, the ship still grew. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the noise. To others, it was chaos. To her, it was music, the sound of survival, being built piece by piece. When she opened her eyes again, she whispered to herself, "They'll see. When the Horde comes, they'll see what we've built." And far above, in the shadows of the command tower, Counselor Jarak watched once more. The humans had built something the Alliance never would have thought of. Something ugly, something stubborn, something terrifying. For the first time, the crystalline counselor felt a flicker of something he had never felt toward humanity before. Not pity, not disdain, but respect. 2 weeks after the first sparks lit Dock 9, the Ironclad was ready. The great shipyard fell silent as the humans pulled away the last scaffolding. For the first time, the full shape of the vessel stood clear under the artificial lights. It was nothing like the sleek ships of the Alliance. It did not shine like crystal, nor flow like water. It loomed. The Ironclad was massive, covered in overlapping plates of dark armor that looked as if they had been hammered into place by giants. Its sides bristled with turrets and missile bays, ugly and heavy but unmistakably powerful. Where alien vessels were smooth, this one was jagged. Where others gleamed, this one was scarred before it had even launched, its metal blackened by welding burns. The aliens gathered to look. Thousands of eyes, crystals, fins, and mandibles turned toward the human creation. Murmurs spread through the docks, uncertain and hushed. One Lumerian whispered in awe, "It looks like a predator." Another, a Thrix commander, clattered his mandibles nervously. "It looks like war." From the observation deck, Counselor Jarak studied the vessel in silence. He had mocked the humans when they began. He had called their tools pathetic, their methods primitive. But now, staring at the beast they had built with fire and sweat, he felt unease crawl through his crystalline body. This ship did not look fragile. It looked unstoppable. On the platforms below, Captain Alina Reyes stood with her crew, gazing up at the ship they had poured their lives into. Her chest rose with pride, but she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Jonas Hale let out a low whistle. His face was streaked with grease, his hand still wrapped around a wrench. "Well," he said, "she's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, but I wouldn't trade her for 100 of their pretty glass toys." Asha Malik's eyes sparkled as she stared at the vessel she had helped design. "She looks alive," she whispered. "Not beautiful, but alive. Like she wants to fight." Reyes smiled faintly at them both. "Then she's ready." The Alliance Council demanded a demonstration before they would even consider deploying the ironclad. Most of the Council still doubted the humans. They believed this ship was just a crude giant, a waste of resources. But the Horde was coming, fast. And desperation had forced them to give humanity a chance. The demonstration was simple. The ironclad would fire its weapons in a controlled test. On the 15th day, the shipyard gathered again. The aliens watched from the safety of the observation towers as the ironclad floated free of its dock for the first time. Its engines roared like thunder, shaking the very walls of the station. There was no elegance in its launch. It did not glide like an arrow through water. It surged forward like a beast, breaking its chains. Rhea stood on the command deck, her hands tight around the railing. Jonas was at the engineering console, muttering curses as he coaxed the engines into steady rhythm. Asha sat at the weapons station, her fingers trembling but ready. "Bring the railguns online," Reyes ordered. The turrets hummed, their barrels locking into position. Energy built in the coils until the ship itself seemed to vibrate with power. Across the observation deck, aliens leaned forward in disbelief. No Alliance ship used physical projectiles anymore. They had abandoned such weapons centuries ago. "Target the test asteroid," Reyes commanded. The rock was large, dense, marked for demolition. Asha locked the coordinates, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. "Target locked." Reyes lifted her hand. "Fire." The railguns roared. It was not a soft pulse of light, not a beam that shimmered silently. It was thunder. A storm of metal shot through space at unimaginable speed. The asteroid shattered on impact, exploding into a spray of glowing fragments that scattered across the void. The entire dock shook with the sound. Silence followed. The aliens stared at the empty space where the asteroid had been. None of their elegant weapons had ever destroyed something so completely, so violently, so fast. For the first time, the laughter was gone, not just quiet, but gone. Jonas grinned wide, slapping the console. "That's how Earth does it." Asha leaned back, still staring at the fragments of the asteroid. "No one's laughing now." From the observation deck, Counselor Gerak finally spoke, his crystalline voice unsteady. This is not a ship. It is a weapon." Reyes turned toward the viewing screens, meeting his gaze as if she could see. The alarm spread across the Alliance like thunder through the stars. The Krail Horde had arrived. Every screen in the command towers filled with warnings. Red symbols flooded the maps as the swarm poured into the system. Dozens of ships, hundreds, more behind them. Great living vessels of metal and flesh, their hulls pulsing with sickly light, their shapes twisting as if alive. The alien fleets prepared for battle. The Serolith ships glowed with crystalline shields. The Lumerian vessels moved like waves, their hulls shifting with harmonic energy. The Thrix released swarms of drones, filling space with glittering clouds of living machines. And yet, for all their beauty, there was fear in every voice. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge of the ironclad. Her crew was tense but ready. Jonas Hale gripped the engineering console like it was his lifeline, his rough hands steady even as warning lights blinked around him. Asha Malik sat at weapons control, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes locked on the enemy swarm. "Report," Reyes said. Asha's voice shook only slightly. "The Horde numbers at least 60 ships, more coming behind. The Alliance fleets are forming lines at Sector 9, Jonas muttered. 60. That's 60 too many. Reyes straightened, her voice calm. Then we make every shot count. The ironclad surged forward, engines roaring like thunder. Other ships moved gracefully into formation, but the human vessel cut through space with brute force. Its jagged armor caught the light of the nearby star, casting shadows like the teeth of a beast. The battle began. The Horde struck first. Beams of burning energy lashed out, tearing into the Alliance lines. A Cyrillith frigate shattered, its crystal body exploding into glittering fragments. Lemurian ships tried to respond, singing their weapons into resonance, but the beams of sound barely scarred the Horde's regenerating hulls. The Thrick swarms buzzed forward, clouds of drones filling the void, but the Horde consumed them like fire eats dry wood. Panic spread through the comms. Voices shouted over one another. Orders collapsed into chaos. The Horde pressed closer, relentless, unstoppable. And then, the ironclad fired. Its railguns thundered, shaking the ship itself. Metal slugs screamed through the void at impossible speed. One struck a Horde cruiser dead on. The impact tore through the living hull, ripping a hole so large it could not heal. The creature ship shuddered, screamed, and then split apart in a bloom of fire and flesh. The comms went silent for a heartbeat. Then disbelief filled the air. What was that? An alien voice cried. They destroyed it. With metal. Another shouted. But the humans weren't done. Target the second cruiser, Reyes ordered. Missiles roared from the ironclad's belly, trails of fire carving across the darkness. They struck the Horde ship in waves, tearing through its hide, detonating deep inside. The creature twisted, shrieked, and collapsed into burning fragments. Usha's hands shook as she launched the next volley, but her eyes burned with fire. Jonas shouted over the roar of engines, railguns overheating, rerouting power. The Horde turned. They had seen what the human ship could do. Now, dozens of vessels twisted toward the ironclad, their grotesque bodies glowing with energy. Reyes tightened her grip on the railing. Hold steady. Brace for impact. The first blast struck. The ironclad shook violently, alarms blaring. Sparks rained across the bridge. Panels burst in showers of light. Shields down to 60%. Jonas yelled. Another blast hit. Then another. The ship groaned like a wounded beast, but it did not break. Return fire. Reyes shouted. The railguns thundered again. The void lit with fire. Horde ships shattered one by one, but still they pressed closer. The crew fought desperately, every second a storm of noise and flame. On the observation decks, the aliens stared in shock. They had never seen a ship fight like this, taking blow after blow, refusing to die, tearing through enemies with sheer brute force. Their own fleets were breaking, but the human vessel was still standing, scarred and burning but unyielding. Jonas slammed a fist against the console. Hull breach on deck 3. I need repair teams now. Reyes turned to her crew. Go, fix it. We can't stop firing. Without hesitation, human engineers grabbed their tools and ran. They didn't need nanoforges or drones. They had welding, torches, bolts, and grit. In the middle of battle, while the ship shook around them, they patched the hull with fire and steel. Minutes later, Reyes heard the report. Deck 3 sealed, weapons stable. She smiled grimly. Humanity was doing what humanity always did, survive, through stubbornness, not perfection. The Horde pressed harder, surrounding the ironclad. The ship shook again and again, alarms wailing, smoke filling the bridge. But with every blow they took, they struck back harder. Asha fired another volley of missiles. Her hands trembled, but her voice was fierce. Another one down. Jonas shouted over the roar of the engines. We can't take much more of this, Captain. Rhea's eyes burned as she stared at the swarm on the screen. Her voice was low, but steady. Then we make them bleed for every second we have. The ironclad charged straight into the heart of the Horde. Its railguns blazed. Its missiles screamed. Horde ships died in fire and steel, torn apart by weapons the galaxy had laughed at only weeks before. And as the humans fought, The other fleets began to rally. The Seraph, the Lemurians, even the Thrix seeing the ironclad unbroken, they found courage again. Lines reformed. Fire returned. The Alliance struck back. For the first time in living memory, the Horde faltered, and on the bridge of the ironclad, Reyes whispered to herself, her voice lost in the storm of battle, "Now they'll understand. Humanity does not run. Humanity does not break." The battle had only begun, but already the galaxy would never laugh at human tools again. Asterisk, the void of space was alive with fire and metal. The Horde had regrouped, surging forward like a living storm. Their twisted ships glowed with unholy energy, striking the Alliance fleet with unrelenting fury. Every second, the human vessel shook under heavy fire. Hull plating splintered, engines sputtered, and the bridge trembled with each impact. "Captain," Jonas Hale shouted over the alarms. Sparks flew from the console. "We've got breaches in Deck 5, Deck 7, and the missile bays. I need repair teams now." Asha Malek's hands flew over the controls, keeping the railguns locked on the advancing Horde. Her voice was tight, every word clipped by urgency. "They're coming from all sides. We can't hold them for long." Reyes gritted her teeth, her dark eyes scanning the chaos on the screens. This was worse than any drill, worse than any simulation. The ironclad had taken hits it wasn't supposed to survive, but humanity did not have the luxury of perfection. "Listen up," she barked, her voice cutting through the alarms. "Jonas, Asha, every able crew member, get to the damage zones. We're patching this ship with whatever we have. We're not dying here." Jonas nodded, wiping blood and sweat from his brow. "You got it, Captain?" Within seconds, human engineers ran across the decks. Welding torches blazed, metal plates were hammered into place, and wires were rerouted in real time. In the middle of battle, in a storm of fire and smoke, humans moved with a precision no alien nanoforge could match. Every repair was rough, every patch visible, but it held. Outside, the ironclad rumbled forward. Its railguns and missile pods fired relentlessly, striking the living Horde ships in perfect timing. One vessel shattered under the combined firepower. Another screeched as metal tore through its flesh-like hull. The Horde pushed harder, but the human ship kept moving, rising from the wreckage like a scarred titan. A Thrix observation squad hovered nearby, clicking their mandibles in disbelief. How are they still functioning?" one whispered. Their sophisticated drones had already fled, their elegant weapons failing against the relentless fire and repairs of a single human vessel. Back on the bridge, Rhea's jaw was tight. Her eyes scanned every angle, calculating risk, predicting the Horde's next strike. "We can't let them encircle us," she muttered. "We need a plan." Asha's fingers trembled, but her mind was sharp. "If we can take out their command vessel, the swarm might falter. We just need a clear shot." Jonas grunted, tightening a bolt on the engine console. "Clear shot? You mean we go through the teeth of the storm and hope we survive?" Reyes looked at him, her expression calm yet fierce. "Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. Humanity doesn't wait for perfect conditions. We adapt, we survive, and we fight." The human crew responded, as if inspired by her words alone. Engineers ran to reinforce shields, while gunners loaded railguns with custom rounds. Every crew member moved with focus and determination, improvising constantly. Metal that had been cracked was hammered into place. Circuits fried by the blasts were rerouted. Torn missile bays were patched in mid-dash flight. Then came the moment of decision. The Horde's command ship, a massive, writhing behemoth, pushed through the center of the swarm, its glowing hull radiating menace. Reyes made her call. "All hands, focus on the command vessel," she ordered. "Prepare every weapon. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we do not stop." The ironclad surged forward. The engines groaned under stress. Sparks flew from overloaded, power conduits, but the ship moved as one living creature. Railguns fired in a continuous roar, missiles streaked across the void, and every shot struck true. The Horde commander screamed through the comms, a horrifying, echoing sound that shook the Alliance fleet, but the ironclad did not falter. Every time a blast tore a hole in the hull, human engineers patched it with. The void of space had grown quiet. The Krail Horde, once a living storm of fire and metal, was retreating. Their ships, torn apart by the relentless ironclad, limped away into the darkness, their glowing hulls flickering like dying embers. The surviving Horde vessels would regroup, but today, they had met something they could not destroy. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge, her hands still trembling from hours of battle, yet her posture remained firm. The ironclad was battered and scarred. Smoke curled from gashes in the armor, and every deck bore the marks of fire and impact. But it floated, proud and defiant. Proof that humanity could survive where even the greatest technologies struggled. Jonas Hale leaned against a console, wiping soot and blood from his face. His grin was tired, but fierce. She's ugly, she's scarred, and she's alive. And I wouldn't trade her for 1,000 pretty ships. Asha Malik laughed softly, exhaustion mingling with relief. They'll remember this. The whole Alliance will. From the observation deck, aliens were silent. The Cyrillith Counselor Jarek's crystalline facets glimmered faintly, a subtle sign of awe. The Lemurians were no longer whispering, were staring, unable to hide the respect in their expressions. Even the Thrix, known for their pride, had quieted, their mandibles clicking softly, as if hesitant to speak. One young Lumerian stepped forward, translating for the others. The humans. They did not merely survive. They commanded the battle. Their ship. Their methods. It was Cherak's voice cut across the deck, firm and clear. It was human. And humanity has proven that cleverness, courage, and determination are as powerful as any advanced technology. Reyes watched the counselor, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. She had expected disbelief, perhaps even continued mockery, but now, there was something new in their eyes, understanding. The crew began walking the decks, checking systems and making last-minute repairs. The noise of the battle was gone, replaced by the rhythmic hum of engines and the occasional hiss of steam from temporary fixes. Every human moved with the same stubborn energy that had carried them through the fight. Their unity and perseverance clear in every gesture. Jonas clapped a young engineer on the shoulder. You did good, kid. Every bolt, every plate, this ship stands because of you. The engineer smiled shyly. We all did it together. Asha's eyes swept the ship, lingering on the welds, the patched armor, the heavy railguns that had cut through the Horde's command vessel. They'll be writing stories about this, but they won't understand how much of us went into it. Reyes nodded. And that's fine. We don't need stories. We need to survive. And today, humanity did more than survive. We led. In the distance, Alliance ships began repairing, regrouping, and moving to secure the system. The sight of the ironclad, still standing, inspired courage where there had been fear. Alien fleets that had faltered now held their formations. The humans had not only survived, they had become a symbol. Counselor Jarak approached the bridge, his form shifting to reflect subtle light. Captain Reyes, he said carefully, your people have done what we believed impossible. Not because of your tools, not because of technology, but because of your spirit. Reyes met his gaze, tired but resolute. We are not perfect. We do not have flawless weapons or infinite resources, but we have each other, and we do not give up. Asha looked at the counselor, her voice steady. It's not just the ship, it's the people inside it. That's what counts. Even the youngest Cyrillith soldiers, watching from the decks below, began to murmur among themselves. Humans, they fight differently. They survive differently. We can learn from them. Jonas leaned on a railing, wiping his brow, and added, quietly, they'll remember the ironclad now, but they'll remember the crew even more. The ironclad itself seemed to settle, its engines humming with pride. Scars and dents lined its hull, a testament to the storm it had faced. It was not elegant, it was not beautiful, but it had endured, and in its endurance, it had proven something far more important than aesthetics. Reyes turned toward the stars, looking at the retreating horde fleet. Her voice was barely above a whisper, carried only to those nearest. This isn't over, but we've shown them humanity will not be underestimated. Asha placed a hand on her shoulder. They'll see what we can do. Today, we changed everything. Jonas chuckled softly, leaning back against the console. I told you, ugly can be powerful. Reyes smiled faintly, letting herself breathe for the first time in hours. She looked at her crew, tired faces illuminated by the glow of the engines, and felt a deep sense of pride. They had faced the impossible, and they had survived. More than that, they had inspired an entire fleet to hope. The stars outside the viewport were quiet again, but the echoes of battle lingered in every corner of the ship, and among those echoes, the galaxy began to understand something new, that humanity's greatest weapon was not their tools, not their ships, but their courage, their adaptability, and their refusal to yield. In the end, as the ironclad floated, amidst the recovering fleet, battered but undefeated, Reyes whispered, almost to herself, let them laugh no more. Humanity has shown what it can do, and the universe will never forget it. Asterisk, the battle had slowed, but the ironclad and the Alliance fleets were far from safe. The Krail horde had not retreated entirely. From the shadows of a distant nebula, massive tendrils of living metal reached out, forming new ships in a way the aliens had never seen. It was a phenomenon born of the horde's hive minda, terrifying, regenerative force. The Alliance scrambled to respond, but every attempt to strike it down failed. Lasers bounced off, missiles were absorbed, and energy weapons barely scratched. Its hull, that the alien fleets panicked. It's evolving, a Lumerian commander cried. Our weapons, they're useless. Reyes stood on the bridge of the ironclad, eyes narrowing. This isn't about brute force, she muttered. It's about thinking differently. Jonas Hale clapped a hand to his forehead, smearing grease across his brow. You mean, we can't just shoot it? No, Reyes said firmly. We'll outsmart it. Asha's eyes lit up. If it's building itself from its surroundings, it has to follow patterns, predictable patterns. We just need to find the rhythm. The crew leaned in, staring at the screens, showing the tendrils extending and reshaping themselves. Every ship, every piece of the horde's new formation moved in repeating sequences. Like the beats of a machine learning itself, Reyes took a deep breath. Humans don't follow patterns. We adapt. We improvise. That's our advantage. Jonas, Asha, here's what we do. For the first time in the battle, the ironclad stopped shooting at the enemy directly. Instead, it moved in erratic bursts, zigzagging unpredictably, weaving through space like a wild animal. Its engines roared in sudden surges, sending shockwaves through the void. The horde's living metal reached for it, striking in patterns designed to trap and consume, but the ironclad was never where the enemy expected. Each strike passed harmlessly through empty space. Jonas grinned, despite exhaustion. I like this plan. It's reckless and ugly, just like us. Asha monitored the energy fields. Captain, their regeneration is slowing. They can't predict our moves. Rhea's lips pressed into a determined line. Now we hit them where it hurts. The humans identified a weak point, a node where the living metal converged to control its hive mind. No laser, no missile could reach it, but the ironclad could. With every ounce of engine power, the ship surged toward the node. The crew held their breath as the horde struck again and again. Sparks flew along the hull. Decks shook. The entire ship groaned under the stress of evasive maneuvers. But Reyes and her team never faltered. Jonas shouted over the alarms, "We're close. All power to the forward railguns and missiles." Asha aligned the weapons. "Ready. Fire." "On my mark." Reyes nodded. "Do it." The ironclad fired everything it had. The railguns screamed, missiles streaked forward, and the combined force struck the node dead on. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the living metal shuddered. A low, terrifying sound echoed through the void, as if the hive itself was screaming. The node shattered, and the tendrils collapsed inward, convulsing and writhing uncontrollably. The horde ships that remained scrambled, lost, and leaderless. Without their command node, the regenerative wave failed. Their formations broke apart. The Alliance fleets surged forward, striking with precision, and finally driving the remaining horde ships into retreat. The battlefield fell silent, except for the hum of engines and the occasional creak of the ironclad's armor cooling. "Captain," Reyes exhaled, her chest rising and falling with relief and fatigue. "It's over," she said quietly. Jonas wiped his brow, a broad grin spreading across his face. "We did it. We actually did it." Asha's hands shook, but her eyes sparkled. We really outsmarted them." From the observation deck, Counselor Gerak finally spoke, his crystalline facets glittering with what could only be called humanity. "You have turned the impossible into the inevitable, not through perfection, not through elegance, but through unpredictability, courage, and ingenuity. You have done what no other species could." The Surlith, the Lemurians, and even the Thrix stood in stunned silence. They had always valued intelligence, power, and beauty. And yet, it was humanity's messy, stubborn, and fearless spirit that had won the day. Reyes turned to her crew, exhausted and scorched, but glowing with pride. "This ship, these weapons, they are nothing without you. Every bolt, every